Heart pounding, she obeys, and before her eyes the rags unfurl on their own. The breeze leaves cool kisses on her palms as crisscrossing red cuts knit into fine white lines. I will let you rest. When Soraya wakes in the garden, stiff and covered with dew, she lifts one hand. Clean, slender scars line her palm. She looks beyond her hand at the sleeping panther, and in her mind's eye she sees the young man pinned to earth by the weight of 1,000 needles. She takes new rags, wraps her hands, and reaches for the next needle. Some days are rainy, others are hot as she pulls the needles from the panther's body, smoothing silky hide with her bandaged hands. For 7 days and nights, the house of night cares for her. Doves bring her food, blankets for chilly nights, fresh cotton for her hands. When the afternoon sun beats hot on her black hair, she retreats into the blue shadows of the palace in the company of peacocks and creamy white gazelles with obsidian eyes. She follows the delicate click of hooves on marble to libraries filled with shelves heavy with manuscripts, elegant hemmings, a throne room of obsidian studded with opals. But she's never long from the panther's side. Even in sleep, she curls into her nest of blankets within reaching distance of clawed paws and twitching whiskers. In sleep, she spends each night in a silver desert, drenched in starlight, dreaming of breezes that heal her sliced palms and the voice of the night begging stories of her. In return for her tales, the night sings its own stories of birth, of the 8 heavens, of winking candlelight and cursed necklaces in bazaars that are neither here nor there, of an arrogant young god stumbling into a foolish bargain and cursed to eternal sleep, of the profound loneliness of 1,000 years of night. On the morning of the 8th day, 3 needles remain in the panther's hide. Soraya bandages her clammy palms, inhales deeply to soothe her thundering heart. 1 needle, dripping rubies, joins its fellows in the lacquered box. Her hands shake. 2 needles. The last needle. Her heart pounds so loudly she does not notice when the cooing of the dove stills. She wraps the sharp shaft of the needle in cotton, places rags on rags, and stars fill her vision as her neck snaps back, screaming as she's yanked away from the panther by her hair. Breath cracks out of her lungs as she hits hard earth. Shadows snake past her. The panther, were the shadows pouncing on the beast? She coughs, gasping for breath. No! A flash of yellow and red through the black veil of her hair. She lifts her head. The Jinni is crouched near the beast's sleeping body. Her eyes turn on Soraya, and shadows follow her gaze, slicing through the air and winding themselves around Soraya's throat, her wrists. You will not speak to him, the Jinni says. To whom? The Jinni bares long fangs like a cat and lunges for the panther. She sinks teeth into the rags wrapped around the final needle and wrenches her head back. The panther moans as the final needle is yanked from its hide. Its eyes snap open. Deep obsidian pools fasten on Soraya as darkness blooms around it, filling the garden with shadow. Tendrils of smoke and ink bleed from every scar, every wound in the panther's hide as it lurches to all fours and it rears on its hind legs. And in a moment, in the passing breath, between a shudder and stillness, it is no panther, but a man. He stands before the Jinni, in a man with the hair of an inky silk of lonely nights, dressed in a simple white shirt and loose trousers. He stares at his palms, at his arms, and meets the Jinni's gaze, his fierce bright eyes brimming with questions. I am Soraya, the Jinni purrs, gesturing with one hand for the lacquered box. The air of the garden ripples with power as the box rises into the air and floats towards the man. It opens to bear its blood-encrusted contents. I have cared for you, removed every needle. You slept for 1,000 years, but I have woken you. From the air around the box, smoke-like tendrils of shadow reach for the man's shoulders, embracing his chest, slinking up to his head. Soraya looks on in wordless horror. She rises to her knees, her hands clenched into fists. No, no. The shadows melt into the man as he looks from the box of needles to the Jinni's face and back again. At last he speaks. A sweet voice broke into my long sleep. Gentle hands soothed my pain. Soraya's heart leaps to her throat. That voice is soft thunder. That voice is moonset. One foot, then the other, and she's standing, her vision swimming. I fell in love with the stories that voice told me. I fell in love with the storyteller, he says, but he is looking at the Jinni. Soraya's cheeks flush with anger. She opens her mouth to speak, and he turns to her, meets her eyes. The axis of the worlds turns, realigns to the earth beneath her bare feet. Her bones hum. She wonders if his do too, when the ghost of a memory flits across his sharp features. And this is... She gasps, she gapes, but no words come. Her heart hammers against her ribcage, begging, pleading, weeping. You will not speak to him. It was not an order, but a spell. This is my mortal servant, the Jinni coos. Pay her no heed. He looks away, and Soraya drops her gaze to the earth. Dirt blurs her eyes as her heart sinks like a stone. Such was the bargain. Succeed and be rewarded. Fail, and... She gazes in horror at the shadows that cuff her wrists. Living, writhing bonds. Servitude begins that day. The palace is transformed, awakened, with the god from the slumber of 1,000 years. The animals multiply, people immortal, and not fill the palace with music, laughter, and movement, for the house of night prepares for its master to wed the Jinni. Libraries are dusted, hammams scrubbed, windows thrown open. Once silent halls and corridors are awash in sunlight and bright colors. Gone are Soraya's ripped rags, the final relic of her life before the sandstorm, before the crow. She's dressed in silk blouses and billowing trousers, white as jasmine blossoms, neckline and ankles beaded with emeralds. Fragrant, night-blooming orchids that will never wilt are woven into her long black hair. But the shadows at her throat and wrists, the hollowness in her chest, deafen her to the reborn bustle of the house of night. Day and night melt together as she fulfills the tasks the Jinni assigns her. Smoke cuffs bind her hands behind her back as she's ordered to collect every fallen petal from the bouquets and garlands that fill the Jinni's bridal chambers with her teeth. Arrange every jewel in the growing trousseau in intricate patterns on the marble floor with knees and nose, only to begin anew when her work is ruined by a sulphurous breeze and the jinn's dissonant laughter. She is confined to a wing of the house, far from the garden, far from the cooing doves and the sunlight. She sees no trace of the man who was a panther, the man with the voice of the night, nor does she wish to. What would it change? Darling mortal, the Jinni purrs, saccharine voice dipped in venom. Soraya feels the burn of immortal eyes on her back and her bound wrists as she mops floors with filthy water in her knees. As my servant, you'll receive a wedding gift from my betrothed. What do you wish for? Soraya's knees ache, bruised by hours spent inching down marble corridors. What does she wish for? She wishes for respite from this world of trickery and humiliation. She wishes for an end to this story. She wishes for the lonely nights filled with wondering if she's dead or not, if this is a fever dream or an afterlife. She wishes for something, anything, that reminds her of home. A clever girl might ask for a tool, some way to help her escape the house of night and never look back. But Soraya speaks without thinking. I want a patience stone. A sinew in her heart twists tight when she thinks of her mother, of warm, calloused hands pressing a cool stone into hers, of the comforting weight of a quiet companion held tight in one fist, or the relief of pouring her troubles into the stone. You ask the master of the House of Night for a common patience stone. The Jinnee's disbelief rings through the corridor. How ruined are the minds of mortals, full of such fanciful stories and the dullest wishes. Her laughter is like shattering glass. Shards slice into Soraya's heart and bury themselves there. Her request is a jest to the jinn, and in the spirit of mockery, her wish is fulfilled. Soraya receives a patience stone. It's the twin in shape and size to the one she lost the day of the storm, the day she followed the crow. But as she takes it in her hands, she knows it's been remade, reborn. It's warm, it sings at her touch. She clutches it to her chest, and tears of relief thickening her throat, blind to the Jinnee's sneers. And after nightfall, she risks slinking away from the Jinnee's dark wing of the House of Night. The moist earth of the garden sinks beneath her bare feet. The marble of the fountain cools her back as she sits and leans against it. The moon is heavy and full above the crown of the mountain. She came to the House of Night in search of shelter and found servitude, but she has this. She cradles the patience stone before her, cups it in the scarred palms. She whispers past the heavy grief in her throat and pours into the stone a story she told 12 times over the 8 days and nights in the garden. A tale of a princess who wields a cursed flower to poison unwanted suitors, who runs away with a pirate maiden. Around her ferns rustle, jasmine whispers. The air around her lightens and begins to glow. She looks up. Words melt from her lips, drowned in wonder. It's as if 1,000 stars have dipped from the sky through the crown of the mountain. Constellations fill the garden, bathing the ferns, the jasmine, the fountain, and the starlight. A voice, reverent and said, "It was you." She leaps to her feet, clutching the stone to her breast. A form glides out of the shadows into the starlight, the man, the beast, the voice of the night. She steps backward into the fountain. Marble presses into the backs of her legs. Her chest has become too shallow for the heart thundering at the base of her throat. He steps toward her. Darkness softs. His dreams bloom. Around him is a shadow of apprehension flickers across his brow. Will you hold out your hands? She cannot say no, would not, even if no Jinni spell knit her voice to her throat. Her right hand clutches the stone to her breast as she offers the trembling left. He takes it in his own and traces white scars along her palms, along slender fingers. His touch like night breezes. There is no time, there is no garden, only the brush of his fingertips, the wonder in his eyes as he raises them to hers. For many nights, I search in vain for a patient stone in light markets, growing so frustrated I was prepared to give a fortune for one, but in the end, it was given to me freely by a crow on one condition. Rubies glint in her mind's eye, winking with every precise avian tilt of an ebony head. That I listen to the worries poured into the stone. She draws her hand back and cups the stone before her, between them, and she speaks, not to him, but to the stone. The words come slowly at first, then quicken into a torrent as she tells the stone a story of a girl who followed a crow, a girl who pulled needles from a wounded beast until her palms bled, who was tricked by a Jinni, whose voice was stolen away, A girl who wanted nothing but to sit by the beast's side under the sky in the heart of the house of the night, telling its stories for eternity, sleeping in cool air and starlight. She falters, voice wavering on the edge of tears. She doesn't know how to end the story with anything but silence. She raises her eyes from the stone and meets his. You will have that. 4 words and the deepest promise she's ever been given. The stone cracks. She gasps, pieces crumbling through her fingers onto her bare feet, into the grass. A shriek splits the night. She whirls, clutching the remnants of the stone in a protective fist. The Jinni is lured in the garden, a burning ember of rage, heat rippling out from the flames of her skirts. She lies. Tendrils of night bloom as the man steps forward between her and the Jinni. You lied. His voice is soft as a panther's paws as it crouches to spring, but when he speaks again, he's the rumbling soul of a storm, the roar of a maelstrom. You've lied to the god of night, the son of time, and you will be punished. A thunderclap. The Jinni's burning skin hisses as heavens open and rain pours through the crown of the mountain. Begone, and take your spells with you. Steam billows from Jinni as she shrieks with renewed rage. Soraya's hands fly to her ears, clutching her skull as white-hot pain snakes like forks of lightning through bone. Stained glass windows shatter, glittering shards filling the garden where there had been nothing but stars. Begone. A second thunderclap, a final hiss. Glass falls to the soft earth. Steam, then the rings of shadows at Soraya's wrists and throat melt away in the wash of the rain. The voice of the night turns to her. His jet hair is wet against his face. Raindrops catch on his eyelashes, reflecting starlight like opals. Come. His voice cradles a question. It echoes in her bones, dusky as dreams. Come. He holds out a hand. Her heart skips like a stone on water. Soraya of 1,000 stories. Will you tell me, how does this one end? She takes one step towards him, then another. For eternity is not one with less.